The White House has condemned the arrest of American journalist in Russia on spying charges. Russia's security service, the FSB, accused Evan Gershkovich of trying to obtain classified information. He's pleaded not guilty, and his employer, the Wall Street Journal, is demanding his immediate release. It's the first time an American reporter has been detained in Russia as an alleged spy since the Cold War. Washington is advising all U.S. citizens to leave.
Guards at a Moscow court bundled Evan Gershkovich out of the building following his brief appearance. The 31-year-old pleaded not guilty to spying charges. But exactly what he's alleged to have done remains unclear. His lawyer says he wasn't even allowed in the courtroom.
I can't say anything because I haven't seen the charges filed against him, but I'm convinced that my client could only have acted legally.
Gershkovich was arrested hundreds of kilometres away from Moscow in the city of Yekaterinburg. He's believed to have been working on a story about local attitudes to the war in Ukraine. But Russian authorities claim Gershkovich was acting on behalf of the US to access state secrets.
Under the guise of journalistic activities, a journalistic visa and accreditation, judging by the investigative measures taken against him, he was engaged in completely different activities.
Gershkovich has been working in Russia as a journalist since 2017. He's been with the Wall Street Journal for just over a year, and the paper has been quick to condemn his arrest. In a statement, they demanded his immediate release. Other journalists also expressing their grave concerns.
It has a chilling effect on foreign journalists, especially Western journalists. We try to inform international community, international public opinion about the war and about what's going on in Russia.
Gershkovich is the highest profile American arrested in Russia since basketballer Brittany Griner, who spent 10 months in jail on drugs charges. For now, he will spend the next 2 months here in a pre-trial detention centre. His silence a further blow to dwindling media freedoms in Russia.
Earlier, I talked to our Moscow bureau chief, Yuri Reshedo, who's reporting from Riga now, where our studio relocated after DW was banned from Russia. And I asked him to tell us more about his colleague, Evan Gershkovich.
I worked with Gershkovich relatively little. We had contact during the protests in Khabarovsk in the Russian Far East region, but I know a great many colleagues who know very well, even as an extremely professional, passionate reporter who speaks perfect Russian, who has written many investigative reports for various Western media, who is very nice, very friendly, is a funny guy as well. He stayed in Moscow after the start of the war and apparently wanted to report this time on the Russian private army Wagner Group and on the attitude of the Russians to this war in Ukraine.
What happens next? What could Gershkovich face?
Ivan Gershkovich will be in custody in Moscow until the end of May. If the investigation comes to the conclusion that he was actually spying any state secrets, he could face between 10 and 20 years in prison. And the question is, Nicole, whether the Russians would exchange Gershkovich for one of their people in jail in the West. That's why some human rights activists in Russia call the arrest a hostage-taking. It's possible, given the history of past prisoner exchanges. The last one was the US basketball star Griner, who was released in exchange with a convicted Russian arms dealer, and there are still some other Russians who could be considered.
What have reactions to his arrest been in Russia?
Well, it's remarkable that Evan Gershkovich is an American. The fact that both the spokeswoman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Zakharova, we saw her just in our report, and the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, showed a categorical reactions yesterday, both indirectly claiming that Evan Gershkovich was rightly arrested. These reactions show that the case may be at the highest level approved in the Kremlin, and that's a bad sign for all the other reporters. Normally, the so-called so-called press office there is responsible for supporting foreign reporters, especially in their work with the authorities. Instead, Zakharova claimed that Gershkovich had done illegal things under the protection of his press accreditation.
Now, this is widely being read as intimidation tactics. What does it mean for the work of foreign journalists in Russia?
Well, I think his arrest outside of Moscow is significant, apart from the fact that there are some military factories in the Ural region where Ivan was researching. This could happen in any part of Russia because, of course, foreign journalists travel around the country, and, of course, there are plenty of factories in Russia that are more or less related to the defense industry. I, too, have traveled a lot through Russia when reporting for the WS Moscow office and knew that I've been monitored. It started at the hotel where I checked in as a foreigner. Sometimes I saw a car following my team while shooting. What also happened is that the people I interviewed were later questioned by the police. And I think this is the worst consequence of Gershkovich's arrest. Colleagues in Russia will find it even more difficult to talk to the people because they will be afraid of working with alleged spies.
Very interesting insights. Yuri Resheto, DW's Moscow bureau chief, currently reporting from Riga. Thank you.